Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So the next sequel that we're going to be covering is Inspector Gadget 2. And I saw it for the first time when I was preparing for the interview with this week's guest, director, screenwriter, and all-around great and hilarious guy, Alex Zamm. Alex, we talked about his journey. It was really cool to connect with him because me and Jamie can never decide like, oh, this is who we're going to talk to, and then they're going to be on. We reach out to people, and people are kind enough to share their time and their stories with me. So it was pretty neat to talk with him because my daughter is absolutely obsessed with Woody Woodpecker. And watching, I'm like, oh my God, I love this. This is what these animated movies, animated mixed with like normal people, like this is the kind of universes we need. And so cool that like a year later I'm talking with the director. So it was really cool to hear about Alex's journey as a kid, just falling in love with movies. A really cool story. I'll let him tell it because it's hilarious, about how he won free movie tickets for a year. And then that's when he was immersed in cinema 5 days a week. It was like his school that he was doing. And then he was doing like cartooning. His dad connected with somebody at Mad Magazine. And just so much stuff that we covered. It's so funny. I do these interviews and it's fun when I release them a few months down the road because I can really re-listen to it and re-enjoy it. I remember the entire conversations, but it's always cool to hear those little things that might have been like, oh, wow, man, that was so cool. But his stories include Monty Python, Scorsese was one of his teachers, going to Sundance with a film early on. Upright Citizens Brigade, directing a few of those episodes, writing on Green Lantern in the early 90s, way before it came out. Of course, Woody Woodpecker, Larry the Cable Guy, being the guy that works on sequels, Carrot Top, and a ton more. What was cool is when I talked to him, I said, man, my daughter loves Woody Woodpecker. And he was cool enough to send 2 signed movies, which was like super neat. I loved it. It was so cool. One was on Jingle All the Way 2. And the other one was on The Little Rascal Save the Day, which is a great movie. Yeah, Alex was awesome. Do me a favor, if you're new here, please subscribe, like, share. If you're on YouTube, you can watch our unedited reviews and unedited interviews and other fun clips that we have. So subscribe there too. Social media, follow us at Sequels Only. And yeah, just tell everyone about it and about this week's interview with director and writer Alex Zamm. So what I like to do with this, Alex, is like finding out folks' story. Just like any movie, there's a beginning, and your beginnings. What part of New York did you grow up in?
I was born in Manhattan at an early age, and I grew up in Kingston and Woodstock, New York, where the concert was.
Yeah. That's awesome. No, I'm a Jersey guy. So whenever I interview people and it's like any of that New York, New Jersey, PA, well, not really PA, but Connecticut, There's like that vibe. Like even on vacation or when we moved to Portland, Oregon, it'd be like, oh yeah, you're from Jersey. And it's like this cool connection because like we speak a little faster than most of the country. So,
we speak faster and our blood goes faster through our veins. It's a totally different pace when you're out here. When you're from there.
Portland was like crazy.
Yeah.
How slow it was, like the service and everything was just so, and we were like we're not like even like the really fast beat Jersey people, but I just remember being like, wow, this is taking a long time for like breakfast. It's like this, we're usually in and out of the diner.
Well, I got to say, when I'm working, I feel like a New York person with Jolt Cola. That's the pace I go.
That's amazing. So when did you fall in love with like film and TV? Like what was that early memory that really sparked, where your career went?
I think I grew up in a family of storytellers. That's was always it. My mom was a writer. My dad always told us great stories. He's a doctor, but he always told us amazing stories about science. My grandmother was an exaggerator. So I grew up around fantastic sense of narrative. They always took us to so many great movies. They never really edited for my sister and I. It was like we were seeing 2001 when we were kids, and we were seeing, we would see family movies, or European movies with subtitles. Even if we couldn't understand them, it didn't matter. They took us to everything, which is great. But my town, Kingston, had a little movie theater, and they had a giveaway. So Woody Allen's Bananas had come out, and if you brought a banana to the movie theater, you would get a free ticket to the next, to any movie you wanted to go. If you wore a monkey costume, you would get a year pass. So
Wow.
I was obsessed with monster movies, and so for Halloween, my mom helped me make a monster costume, which was basically brown furry potato sack, and with holes cut out for fangs and monster eyes and rubber monster hands and feet. And that was my Halloween costume. I was a little kid, and I said, "Mom, we got to turn this into a monkey." So she took nylon stockings and socks, and we made a monkey nose and whiskers and a tail out of some stockings. And we went to the movie theater, and it was in the middle of the summer. And I sat there watching Bananas, but I never really see it till later because my glasses fogged up in the first few minutes. There was no air conditioning. And I was a puddle of sweat. My mom leaned over because you probably can take it off. And I said, "No, Mom, they're going to disqualify me." So I sat there through this entire movie, hearing it more than seeing it, and came out with my sopping wet costume and went to the manager and gave my banana, gave me a pass. And I said, "I'm ready for my year's pass, though." And he goes, "How do I know that's a monkey?" And so he was a bit of a jerk. And so I, scratched my head. I did everything I could to prove that I was indeed a legitimate monkey costume. And he goes, "I'll have to think about it." And I realized that no one else in the entire city had come with a monkey costume, and he did not want to really give this thing away. He was it was a farce, to give it away. And
Yeah.
so,
Like the auto dealerships and all those. Yeah.
so my dad went down. I asked him a few times, never went back. My dad finally went down and clarified that he had to make good, and he came back that pass. And so I went to the movies that summer 5 days a week. And for the rest of
That's
the year, I was
awesome.
seeing the same movie over and over again. And so at one point stopped watching what a movie was, but how a movie was. And it actually increased my love affair with movies. And I would go up to and go up to the snack counter and see that jerky manager and go, "Monkey Boy will have some malt balls and a big popcorn and a Coca-Cola." And I would rub it in, but I got to tell you, that was my love affair with movies started with that.
What a summer. I've remember not that. That is such a cool origin story for like falling in love. Not like you wouldn't be where you are today if that didn't happen or your dad didn't go down there and the guy made it right. But I
Yeah.
remember one summer just always renting. My dad would leave me like a few bucks every day, and the VHS place by me, Holly Park Video, would have early bird special 99 cents, but you had to like have it in the Dropbox the next morning. My dad was a garbage man. So I'd go down, ride my bike, and it was like going through like each section, me and my buddy, like all the horrors, and just by the art and all of that, it's such a ingrained in my memory of like some of the worst movies I've ever seen. Is back in the day when you rented a movie, like you watched it because that's what you had, unless
You
you wanted
weren't
to
flipping
watch what
around
was
to
on
something
TV.
else. And
Yeah,
and you
no,
weren't flipping around. But I actually think that everybody has that. We all love narrative, and everybody has that moment where it comes alive for them. I mean, another one for me was that my dad claims he gave me television watching lessons, as if one needed lessons. He was working all week, and he was exhausted. And so we would sit on the couch together. And I was a little kid, and we would flip between the channels and watch 5 movies at once between commercials, flipping around. And you'd come back, you're watching a war movie, and then it was maybe a comedy, and then it was a mystery. And we had to figure out what plot we had missed. So it was a
that's
great
cool.
training in plot and going, okay, well, they seem to be in love, but now they're angry at each other. Or now this guy's dead and they were on a mission together. So it was a great way of like anticipating narrative. It was a great education.
That is really awesome. So what was it when it got to the point like, all right, obviously I love movies, I love watching to see how they're made. What was that next step that you took?
That's a great question because I think there's always that leap between loving something and doing it and wanting to do it as a hobby or because you're a passionate fan and then going to be a professional. So that's an interesting question. I feel like for me, I was trying to figure it out. So I was, when I was 11 years old, I wanted to be a cartoonist and I was trying to figure out how to tell jokes and tell stories with cartoons. And my dad was always somebody who opened doors, found a way knew somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody, and I got to go to Mad Magazine. And
No
so
way.
yeah, and I sat with Bill Gaines and the art director, and they looked at my work and they said, "Kid, you're going to make it as an idea, man. You just need to learn how to draw first, a little better." So I studied art, and I wanted to be in that world of creating great images and also creating funny images. And then I started doing theater in Woodstock. That a friend turned me on to that. So I was acting and working in the stagecraft, and I was writing short stories, and it all started to come together. And then I met a guy. I would always weed the plants in my dad's office just to help him out and get a little scratch. And I met a guy in the office, and we were talking. And he said, "You have gift for gab. I want you to work for me." And I didn't. "What do you do?" He goes, "I work for All Things Considered." A guy named Jay Allison, and he was a producer and had a studio. And he said, "Why don't you come work for me, and you'll do interviews?" So suddenly I did that for 6 years. And I felt that I was starting to put together image making, performance, and sound, telling stories with sound, and it all came together. And then my buddy, Jason Carey, who I'm still friends with from high school, said, "Hey, I'm making a little movie." I had never held or seen a movie camera. "I need you to hold this microphone, and I need you to hold this lamp." And I was just in awe, just watching him make something and then put it together. And I suddenly said, "I want to study film." And that
Wow.
was, so I started making little movies and little Super 8 movies. And, they're chaotic and they're not organized, but they had an energy to them. And I went to school in SUNY Binghamton, upstate New York. And
Yeah.
I was watching movies 5 nights a week there after having watched them, in upstate. But then now I was learning about world cinema, and I started making these little movies and taking film theory and criticism, but also film production. And I bought on Canal Street one day, there was a, guy selling leftover film they found in some warehouse on the street. And I took it back and I bought it for like $10. And it was footage, 16 millimeter footage of dolphins jumping and the grain industry and where it was the craziest thing. I put it all together and I said, "I see a movie here." And I filmed some new scenes and I made this parody of public service announcements. And it was called Croutons and You. And, and the film department hated it because they all made avant-garde films there. And I was like the black sheep of the family doing comedy and narrative. And what happened was I started sending it to film festivals, and Graham Chapman from Monty Python saw it and he called me up, and I thought it was a prank. I thought my friends would go, "Yeah, really good English accent, Johnny, good English accent." And it really was him. And it was a real honor because I was such a huge Python fan. And he loved this surreal little 3-minute film. And he said, "I really want this for this HBO show I'm doing, and I'll give you $400 or whatever it was for it. Whatever. I think I spent $200 on the film and I made four. And I said, I can make money at this. This is 100% profit on
Yeah.
$200. So I really committed then to that I was going to do this thing and figure it out. And I also committed to that if I never got paid to do it, I was going to be really happy finding ways to get short ends or video stock and just make things. And that was, I had to make peace that I wasn't doing it for money. I was purely doing it just because I needed to make things. And that was the pact I made with myself.
Wow, that's awesome. The interview part, like especially early on, what type of folks are you interviewing?
Um, it was a lot of people on the street. Like we would do, like there was one piece in Art in America. So I got to interview a lot of artists and a lot of art critics and gallery owners. It was Jay wanted to try to piece together a piece on understanding the conception, the creation, and the commerce of art. And it was a really great piece. But a lot of pieces were man in the street pieces, like Studs Terkel. And what I loved about it was I quickly realized that everybody is an expert in their own lives. And if you are interested in people, you'll elicit their narrative and
Yeah.
hear what you can learn something from them. So it was just wonderful learning to walk around with a microphone, which gave you a license to talk to anybody, learn how to talk to girls, how to talk to, people who were much higher up than you were as a kid, but you had a microphone. Suddenly you had a license to talk to people and learn how to listen to them.
Wow, that's cool, man.
It
That's
was a
just
great
cool. Again,
happy
no
accident.
matter what you love stuff, like if you really love something so much, like you're gonna keep trying to do it, and then
Yeah.
maybe still be successful. But to have like the early wins, that makes it so much easier. Like I think it's so wild sometimes when you hear people like it's so much love for their craft when it's like, oh my god, they just had their first screenplay produced and they're 48. It's like, wow, I've been doing this since 22, doing acting on the side, odds and ends, and it's just like it's amazing the love that people can have for this craft.
It is. And it's also amazing that it can happen anytime. It's not like you age out. You can
Yeah,
age out,
totally.
but in certain ways, passion and curiosity and creativity, you don't age out. You could do that your whole life. And even though there is, challenges always, the equipment has become democratized. I mean, you couldn't have a beautiful studio like you have years ago at the high level of equipment. It was prohibitive. And now, this is a studio if you let it be. So I just think it's about the quality of story.
There would be like the entry dollar in order to get into a certain thing. And the thing about the passion, like I helped actor Larry Hankin. I connected with him doing one of these, then I helped him put together like his memoirs, and then we became
Oh,
like
that's
buddies.
awesome.
So he would like randomly call me and stuff. And he grew up in the city. He grew up in Brooklyn, so he has
Ah,
that kind of like maybe that's why we connected. But him right now, I'm telling you, it's mind blowing. Like if I could be that passionate he's 83 now, he wants to like not be known as that guy. Like that's his book. He doesn't want to be known as like, oh, the guy from Home Alone. Like during that like all the cameos people buy from him are just from that. It kind of ticks him off, even though he makes money from it. He wants to be known for his like improv days when he was over in San Francisco and Second City in
oh
Chicago.
yeah,
So like
yeah.
he'll call me randomly and be like, "So Doug, I got this idea for a one man show," and he like goes into this thing, and it's like, "Okay, that's it. I'll call you back." And it's like, whoa, man. He's just like, his thing's cool too because he went to Syracuse. He was like a really smart guy and he was
uh,
going to do like a mechanical drawing. They wanted to work at Ford. Like Ford went there to try to pick all the students, but he became friends with Carl Gottlieb, who wrote Jaws
yes,
and a bunch of other
yes.
flicks. That was Larry's buddy in the improv troupe in at Syracuse. And then they went to back to New York, then to Chicago and stuff. Yeah, Larry's
Yes.
like one of those people. It's like, oh, that guy on TV, man, see him in everything. But his pre career is unbelievable. He did like stand up. He was opening up for bands, which
Oh,
was
that's
like really
awesome.
cool. Yeah,
And you don't always know everyone's backstory and their history, but they have a
never.
wealth of other skill sets. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, I love that stuff. But
That's sick.
no, you're the passion. So from you're doing the man on the street. You Monty Python. You get the call, $400. You're like, hey, I'm making money off this. So what was it from there? Were you going? Oh, you were at school at this point. You were in at SUNY in
I,
Binghamton.
I was I was a student at Binghamton, and I said I want
Uh,
to continue with this. And so I realized that I had been doing, occasionally doing PAing in upstate New York and anything just to learn. And I realized I just had an enormous amount to learn. And that while Binghamton was an extraordinary school for exposure, I just didn't have the skill set for production, and I wanted to learn more. So I applied. I was fortunate enough that I said I want to go to school more, and I didn't see a lot of opportunity for me to stay in upstate New York. I looked around for production, and I applied to Columbia University, and I got in to their graduate
wow.
program, and I loved it there because I always thought, even though I love technology and I love learning, I thought that is changing every 6 months. But if you know storytelling, that's eternal. So I wanted to learn with great people, and I was really grateful that I got in there, and I appreciated it every day. And I would PA to get short ends and make these little movies. And I had Milos Forman as my mentor for 4 years. I had Marshall Brickman, who wrote Annie Hall. I
Oh
had
wow.
Martin Scorsese for over a semester, and while he was doing The Color of Money, and got to go to those mixes every week, and that was really just informative to watch how people work and to
Yeah.
see their process and to get egg on my face every day, trying things and taking risks. I had Ralph Rosenblum, who was a very instrumental teacher for me, who was the editor of Annie Hall and Manhattan, and just a great editor. So I just had great people. There's so many more. It was like all these great Czech filmmakers are there because Milos Forman and it brought Frank Daniel, who was considered one of the great screenwriting teachers. He ran USC, AFI, and Columbia at different times, and his influence is everyone from Peter Bogdanovich to David Lynch. So he was just one of those people who influenced a lot of people. So I just had a great experience learning from great people, developed friendships, and was in the trenches with so many people who wanted to do the same thing as I did. We still have those friendships. I still hang around with all those people from then. And I was just fortunate enough that HBO offered had this Filmmakers of Tomorrow type program. That's what it's called. And they said, we will fund a couple movies at all the major films. So I submitted a script with Charles Gerber, who I had met on a short film I made called The Birthday Fish. And that film had gone to Sundance. And so I got to meet other filmmakers. And it was the first time I really felt like, oh, I'm a filmmaker. And I met other filmmakers. And that was just, I put all my money that I'd ever saved weeding and mowing lawns or anything else. I saved up all this money and I spent that $9,000 on this little film called The Birthday Fish, about a love story between a man, woman, and a fish. And that went to Spark City and that opened doors. And then HBO said, okay, you can submit. So I submitted this little script, a 2-minute script called Maestro, about a conductor. And you think that it's like a classical music video. You think he's conducting in front of an orchestra. And at the end, you find out that he's a street performer and he's on the street with a hat.
Wow.
And it came back to the whole thing that I was thinking, no matter what, I was going to make movies because I loved it, not because I was making, money necessarily. So they funded this film for, I think it was $3,000. And I think we went over by $200 because a light bulb, expensive light bulb broke. And that film got seen, and somebody asked me to submit it to Cannes, and I went to the Cannes Film Festival. So I got to go there, and that was a whole eye-opening thing. And then they said, do you want to make another one? So I made my first haircut, which was a nightmarish comical film about a kid's first haircut where he loses an ear, which was kind of almost happened to me as a kid with some exaggeration. And it had stop motion, and it had a lot of animation mixed with live action. And I started finding my passion of mixing the surreal with the real and doing it in any way I could, which was lo-fi. And then I got a screenwriting award for this script I wrote called The Pawn Shop Kid, about a kid whose parents pawn him as a baby, and they end up stranded on a desert island, and the pawnbroker has to raise the kid. And it's about this unusual, kooky stuff. I was doing a lot of kooky, but fun. I started finding my voice and people who would give me guidance. And that's what I was grateful. And good friends other filmmakers who were giving me input, and we had a writing group. And then I got an agent, and that was, they'd never screened films at Columbia before, and they started screening them at this place called Symphony Space. And suddenly there was interest in the work. I had never shown it to more than just my classmates and teachers. And suddenly I had an agent at William Morris, and suddenly I had meetings, and got offered to write the Green Lantern they had a treatment, but they asked me to write it. It was exciting and terrifying because I had a big imagination, but only had written one feature-length screenplay in my life. So there was a lot of learning, a lot of egg on my face, but I learned a lot, and I was so grateful. That was for Joel Silver's company at Warner Brothers.
They had the rights to it, and so early
at
90s.
That time,
wow.
So it went through a lot of, I think, 15, 18 writers in the 20 years before it ever got made. So I never got credit because it's a body of work, but it was really just a pleasure. And I'm still friends with some of the executives and grateful to them, because you come out, everyone says no, but a few people, said yes. And the other one was, I had a deal to make a movie at Paramount. I met a producer, an executive named Jeff Kleeman, and the other one named Lance Young, and they liked my work and gave me a low budget movie with 2 Australian comedians, and named Los Trias Rumbarcos. And we had a script, and we did a short test for them. it was approved at the studio, and we were starting to prep the film, and the administrations changed, and then the
Wow.
project, like then we were all in this building with other projects, and we all put our scripts in a garbage pail, lit them on fire until security came, and we had to wait for all our projects. And that was an epiphany about, that it's not, you have to will a film into existence, and sometimes you can't, sometimes
Yeah.
administration change, but
Wow. That's
it was
interesting.
cool. And then
Is there anything? Obviously, a lot of people touched it after you because that's like 91 ish, and the movie didn't come out until early 2000s, right?
yeah,
So a
I
lot of
can't
people.
remember what year it was. Yeah, a lot of
Yeah, I think it
people,
was.
there was a
It
lot
must
of
have been right
teams of
around then.
writers.
Is there anything? Did you watch the movie?
Yeah, I got to see the final one. I mean, I did see it. I don't think it wasn't my favorite of the superhero movies. And I think Ryan Reynolds would confirm that also. Um, I look, I don't think it's easy to make a movie, and sorry about that. I'm
No,
going to do this
no, it's
phone,
okay.
my old friend spam wrist. But look, I think the Green Lantern world's a really challenging world to try to take on. It was huge. And when I was doing it, my friend read it, the executive, he goes, wow, this is the most expensive movie ever written. I go, well,
Yeah.
yeah, the technology doesn't exist. And you have a character who his bread and butter is his imagination. Hal Jordan can conjure up anything he imagines, and it has to impact physical reality. So it wasn't a cheap movie to make. And, and I think there'll be more movies told like Batman. There'll be different impressions of that, interpretations of that character. And I'm sure some of them will be better and some will be worse.
Yeah, I was trying to think. Obviously, other people could have changed something. Or do you remember anything
Yeah.
that you put into the movie, like a distinctive thing or the name of something that stuck in? That'd be really interesting if you put Zam in there somehow,
Ah,
and that ended up in the movie, like Zam Bank. And it's like, yes, I.
I didn't do it. I mean, I can't remember the approach, but I did remember that I had a really cool thing, which was you see a Warner Brothers a satellite going over the Warner Brothers. The Warner Brothers logo pulls back to reveal a satellite with the Warner Brothers logo on it, and it goes through space over Earth, and then the fabric of the universe rips open, and a ship comes through. And I started the movie was an alien prison break, that there was a prisoners who had escaped, and that's why Hal Jordan came here looking for them. And it was a kind of a cool opening in order to get Abby and Suron and all the Sinestro, and it was cool. There were some incredibly ambitious action scenes through, crashing through buildings and him imagining giant sledgehammers. It was pretty cool. It was
That's crazy
very
when you think about it, like how much goes into movies that never see the light of day until obviously that one ended up seeing the light of day. But like, especially superheroes at that time, I don't know if people were nervous about like, because Captain America, like 1990, didn't like, it wasn't like,
yes,
whoa, this is the coolest thing. Incredible Hulk was like a cool TV show. Because like for years, so many people were like Canon Films, like was trying to hype up doing a Spider-Man movie. They had like
yes.
an ad that they showed, but they didn't even write the script. There was nothing even prepared. But I think just like the fear of, I don't know if this is going to be, because you have to make it good. It would have been interesting to see those type of movies come out then.
I think so too, and I think it's really interesting to just see how not just the technology, but the depth of character, and that you see.
Yeah.
I feel like they don't shy away from the uncomfortableness, and I think that's awesome. I really love the newer movies, and I imagine they were hampered by so many things just technologically back then. But I think there's just more ambitious movies now,
Yeah. No, 100%.
character
And like you
wise too.
said, how are you going to write a story about like Hal Jordan? And there has to be so many things involved that you just can't make. You couldn't make it, you probably even look like it should look like back when you were writing that.
Yeah, I mean, it's come a long way. I have vague memories of the script. It's been, so many years,
Oh,
but
yeah.
there were sometimes I would get notes like, okay, he's going to be a police officer who couldn't make the force. Well, we don't really want to do police. Okay, so all right, so he's a courtroom illustrator. I did that one. who witnessed these travesties of justice, wanted to be a cop, but now his brother's in the force, but he's got an imagination because they wanted to embrace his artistic side with his imagination. So I said, okay, he's a courtroom illustrator. And so he sees insights in the character and tells in the courtroom, but he can't affect justice. So this gives him the opportunity. That's the path I went down ultimately.
Oh man, that's so cool. And how no matter what your first like job is, I know you did like My First Haircut, Maestro, but like directing like Jerry Stiller, because that must have been your first time on that you were in charge on like a what would you
Yeah,
say,
no, I
like a
came out of
bigger
school.
production?
Yeah, it was my first professional directing job, I would say, was coming out of school. I was only out of school 4 weeks, and Laurel Entertainment, who I love, they made a lot of Stephen King things. And I think they had done Creep Show. And they were so nice. They liked my work, and I got a screenwriting fellowship from them. And when I graduated, they offered me a script called One Wolf's Family with Jerry Stiller and Ann Mira and Amy, Ben's sister. Ben was the
Yeah,
only
I
one of
saw
the
that on
family
the
who wasn't in it.
IMDb.
And it was such an honor to direct them. I was a fan of Stiller and Mira. My parents were. And I was so grateful because they treated me, even as a young, inexperienced director, they treated me like I was entitled to wear the hat. And
Yeah.
and they taught me so many things, but they also were just kind to me. And that's something I'm always like, you have to be that you have to pay that forward. And I'm always grateful when you have anybody who you can learn from treat you with respect. So they did, and they were so kind to me, and I had a great time. And the script was written by Paul Dini, who created Harley Quinn and the Batman animated
Ah,
series. And Paul is one of my closest friends out here to this
look
day.
at that.
So we became friends. He was on the West Coast, and we just became friends. And so that was a really nice event. Robert Kluhesi was in there, a great actor. And it was just a lot of fun. And Dick Smith, who had done, Academy Award
Yeah.
winning makeup artist, did his company and group oversaw the makeup for that show. A lot of fun.
That's cool.
And then they offered me another one, which I wish I had done. It was like this great training ground. So many people came out of New York and California working in their studios, making these micro budget horror shows. But anyway, I got the job to do Green Lantern and the Two Guys in Tuxedos movie for Paramount. And so I couldn't do it. So I came out here with everything in my car, moved into my buddy who became my writing partners, Billy Robertson, became my writing partner. We were students at Columbia together, and moved onto his couch until I found a place of my own.
Nice, man. And your credits wise, not like we're not gonna go through everything, but I think obviously you're always working, you're always trying to, do stuff, especially when you have an agent. Like one thing I never thought of, forgot what director I was talking to, but I never thought of directors auditioning. I never thought of that whole concept of like, so say like chairman of the board, you have your agent, and they would like, your agent every so often would send you scripts and be like, hey, would you want to direct this one? Is that how that whole process works?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you find out about a project and say, I'd like to be in the mix for this. You hear about a comic book, screenplay, you hear about something in the works, you hear about an actor getting attached to something, or your agent sends you something, and then you go, okay, is this for me? Is this, do I need to do work? Or do I need to work right now?
Yeah.
Do I connect with this project? I mean, there's a gamut of reasons why we all make what we make. Hopefully it's because we deeply connect with it. And that's important. But, in Chairman's case, I was, the almost ran in with quite a few movies. You come out and you have very little credits, and you're competing with people who have credits, and you're auditioning, and you're giving your notes and your take and why you're the right fit. And it's like alchemy. You're in a room, and sometimes you say the magic word, and that magic word goes, oh my God, that person's thinking the way we do. And sometimes you do tear sheets, or now it's the prep for a meeting is much more elaborate, using Keynote, Midjourney, any number of tools at your disposal to show them the movie that they think they want to see. or that
Yeah.
you have a vision for this movie that exceeds anything they could imagine, and you can handle it logistically and budgetarily and artistically, and work with actors and handle personalities. So there's a lot of factors that are being calibrated on their part because their jobs are at stake and you're dealing with millions of dollars. So you
Yeah.
want to show that you're responsible and creative and know how to handle the business of creativity.
Yeah. And at Carrot Top, that was he's still big. He's like, honestly, when you really think about him, he is phenomenal. Like what he has done like throughout his career.
Yes. Look, I think Scott Thompson, Carrot Top, is an
Yeah.
amazing comedian, and he gets sometimes the short shrift when they go, he's a prop comedian. Well, Gallagher's a prop comedian, and
Oh
there's
yeah.
so many other comedians. Charlie Chaplin's a prop comedian. So is Buster Keaton, so I don't think it's really a fair assessment to punch down. And I think that Scott has really found a voice and brand for himself. And when Phil Goldfine at Trimark and Peter Lenkoff, the producer, I auditioned for it, and I was grateful that they saw that I had a surreal, kooky point of view and that I would connect with it. They were really great about giving me my first real shot at directing, and I'd been very close to getting The Mask and a couple other movies, but
Wow.
Licensed to Drive, I was really, really close in a couple movies that I think I would have done a great job with. But I
Yeah.
understand that other people had more credits and credibility than I did, and they did a beautiful job with those movies. I'm grateful that Peter, like again, back to the people who put wind in your sails, the ones you can count on one hand. Peter
Yeah.
Lankoff, Phil Goldfine were two of those people, and and Mark Amin over at Trimark. So, very little movie. I think it was a really great learning experience. I loved having a real crew and great other creative collaborators. I think tonally, we didn't crack it entirely. In that I think it's interesting. Scott is a, very high decibel, you know, high energy person. But I think if we had tried to make Pee-wee's Adventure, if I were to look back, I would think that would have been a more family movie for his brand. The truth is,
Yeah.
his brand split. He wasn't doing family shows. He was playing Vegas and colleges. But now in retrospect, I think we should have made it a little more, we could have tailored the script more to make it more of a PG movie, or
Yeah.
PG-13. We should have made it a little more like Pee-wee's Big Adventure. But I do think there's a lot of successful things in it, and it was fun to make. But you can only sometimes, the company had just released what was Starman, not Starman. It was something with the word star in it, and they had released it the same day a Star Wars movie came out, and they got
Oh,
tanked and
really?
they lost all this money. And then they came to me the next week and said, well, your movie's not going to be on 1,000 screens. It's going to be on 200 screens
Oh,
or 50 screens, whatever it was. It was something. And I just, you just take it and you move forward and you go, okay, next. What's
yeah.
next?
Like you said, you get the experience, and it's like you need the credit. It's like any job. It's like, well, we want to hire somebody with experience. All right.
Yes.
Well, everybody wants somebody with experience, but somebody has to give that person. That's how I get the experience. But that's what you got. You have something on paper, like on
Yes.
film. You be like, hey, check this out, and people get see your vision because there's so many movies. I'm sure of people. If you're, hey, I want to hire this person, but they only do like horror movies, but it's like, oh, I look at their vision and the way it's filmed. I think this would be perfect for like a type of comedy. Because right after that, you know, that's when it kicked off. Like just having that credit, because the next year you do My Date with the President's Daughter
Which we
within a
wrote. We
year.
wrote My Day with the President's Daughter. I had sold a script with Billy Robertson that was called Max Goes to Camp. It was Walter Mitty at summer camp, like a kid with a
Oh wow!
hyperactive imagination. And so we were doing that for John Davis's company. And we were kicking around ideas and we were stuck on something. I go, wouldn't it be great, if someone kidnapped the president's daughter, and what would that, and we started going around on this thing, and then it became kind of, we sat with the idea and said, let's write that one down. Good ideas come often, they're gifts. You never know where they're going to come from. And sometimes they
Yeah.
come when you're stuck on your own script, one script. So as soon as we were done with Max Goes to Camp, we said, let's go back to that. And My Date with the President's Daughter became a teen version of Roman Holiday. And we had
Wow.
it very close to being made at Rob Reiner's company, Castle Rock. And then Rob said that, he goes, well, we have American President, and we don't want to be known as the company that only makes White House movies. So my buddy Mike Carr is an executive I knew who was at TriStar and other places, said, look, I just got my own deal at ABC at Disney. And I think this is a great script. I'd like to make this. So he presented it to them. And we said, look, would you want to make it as a feature, or do you want to get it made as a television movie? And we said, we'd rather have something made than not made. So we worked with Peter Green, who was a fantastic executive there at ABC Wonderful World at Disney, and Mike Cars, and recrafted the script for their budget and actually made it better. And so we got to make that, got us a Writers Guild nomination, and then it opened up other doors in the family space, which was wonderful. And in between, we were selling screenplays, and some on my own, some with Billy, and really grateful that we got to learn our craft, and it started picking up then.
Wow, that's cool. I like just looking at your biography, which I know you wrote. You definitely wrote that, right? Your
Yes,
bio
it
on
wasn't
IMDb.
AI. It wasn't. Yeah, that was me.
But
That
no,
was
it's really
pre-chat.
funny. It's really funny. Like,
Oh, good.
like your sense of comedy, like the way, obviously it goes through the screen with your movies, but just even reading that and then like just speaking to you for like 30 minutes and just seeing on your IMDb, like UCB, did you do anything with UCB besides, obviously you directed a few episodes, but were you like taking classes or anything there at all? Or you
No,
just have
that's a good
improv as like
question.
in the blood?
No, it was funny. I think that I loved UCB, and I used to go all the time to so many comedy shows in town. And I always wish I could go up on stage. I was never that guy. I'm more behind the scenes, but I always took acting classes when I could, just so I could be better prepared to communicate with actors and to really
It's great.
understand their process and to be. I think it's so like I think every executive should write a screenplay. I think every director should edit. Everything makes you better at your craft. So I was taking for fun classes at Groundlings. I did that for years.
Oh, nice.
And I had met a composer in New York, Chris Hagen, a fantastic composer. I put a little, those little flyers you can rip off I
Yeah.
put one up around different schools when I was at Columbia looking for a composer for the Birthday Fish movie. And Chris answered it. And we became great friends and still are like one of my closest friends in the world. And he's a fantastic composer. And he said, listen, I'm doing this show in New York called Upright Citizens Brigade. You should do it. So I go, well, I don't know them. He goes, let me make the introduction. So he called the producers and said, you should meet Alex. So they were great. And they said, we have an episode. So I flew back to New York. I was happy. I needed to get my accent refurbished anyway. And, the Rosetta Stone classes weren't doing it for me, for my New York accent. And, went back there, and it was so great working with Amy Poehler and Matt Besser and everybody else. Those guys were just awesome, and it was just I loved watching them. They were loose and funny, and my job was to support their type of surreal comedy, and it was insane. We had log rolling, we had alien dolphins, we had crazy stuff, and I think improv is so important, and because you have to come in with a plan. And that's very much my directing. So it's never colored by number. I always like, okay, great. We all know the script. We have a plan, but there are gifts everywhere. And sometimes funny lines come your way, or that someone has a good idea, or you lose a set, or the rain comes and you go, we got to be able to move on the fly and listen to good ideas, which are everywhere. So a lot of the process from improv of yes and instead of no but is definitely a life philosophy that I've taken to filmmaking and to parenting and everything else.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, those guys are legends. I love Besser. Like, still listen to his podcasts pretty much every day. I listen to something while I'm working, Improv for Humans. And like, you look at like Polar, what she did. Ian is always in stuff, always
Yes.
funny. And you think about Matt Walsh, like Veep, like his character in Veep was unreal. And it just I think a lot of that gives people the open doors. So like Amy Poehler always mentions like UCB and like interviews and stuff. And I think it's really wild when you think about the other people that come from that, even the actors that are on Improv for Humans, you're like, these are like great people like Brian Husky. Everything he's in,
Yes.
amazing. Seth Morris. There's so many guys that are just like the go-to people when you're watching like these to see these like one-off guest stars on episodes.
And Ask Cat, their show with such a
The
long running
best.
show,
Yeah.
is a brilliant show. And look, I think those guys are forces of good. They really lifted comedy, and it was really nice. I mean, to have Second City, to have Groundlings, to have them, to have Acme. I just think you know, it's they're all slightly different styles of doing the same thing, and it's wonderful. I love it. They're just it's a brilliant feeding ground, like you said, a seeding ground for great new talent.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And then from there you got the Pooch and the Pauper, but the one that I watched that I've never seen before because we were getting ready to chat was Inspector Gadget 2. And that was a really good movie.
Thank you. Thank you for saying. I got to say, it's one of the things I'm most proud of. I mean, I was so happy that Charles Hirschhorn, who ran Wonderful World of Disney, and Peter Green, they just kept giving me opportunities. They were happy with the work, and I just kept saying yes. And I had never directed an animal movie, and they said do Pooch and the Pauper, and it was lo-fi in certain ways. And I just go, we got to build the White House again, and I don't know. My attitude was every day that I show up, I get to learn something new and work with cool people.
Yeah.
But then when they got their own deal at Disney, their first movie was Inspector Gadget. And it was the biggest budget for me at that point. It was a $10.5 million US budget, which with the Australian dollar translated to about 17.5 million, almost 18. And
Yeah.
it was the biggest, and it was suddenly I had a sandbox that I could fill my imagination with in a way that I had never done before. So Billy and I wrote the script and worked closely with really great execs at Disney and with the creators of Engadget. And I wanted to be really true to their creation. And I know that, like they had made a really wonderful first movie with Matthew Broderick. And I thought they made great choices, but they had $100 million to make that movie. 100 million. And it was a little like a tidal wave going, how am I going to make a movie for 1/10 that budget? And so I was so excited, but because I come from a drawing background, I said, I need to envision the movie first. And the execs, Jerry Ketchum at Disney, who ran physical production, I said, I really need a team of storyboard artists. So I worked with them and created 1,000 pages of storyboards. 1,000. It was, I still have my garage stacks, and we had concept art for 3 months of just designing. And then we were dusting off whatever props we could find. And it was just an incredible exercise in being specific, because I realized I was playing on a different playing field and I had to be the most prepared guy in the room. So I imagined the whole movie like a giant comic book. And when I got to Australia, to shoot it, we had everything imagined. And then we had great collaborators. I had John Cox, who won an Oscar for Babe, doing all the creature work and all the, the visual effects work. And I'm sorry, let me say that again. I had John Cox, who won an Oscar for Babe, doing all of the animatronic stuff, the things that were popping out of the inventions. He was doing all those kind of big special effects.
Wow.
And we just had great companies and great people who really helped us figure out the handoffs, the constant, every shot was a handoff between a physical effect and a digital effect and a stunt. Everything was such a big deal. And I just felt like I was a fish back in the water. I felt like this was where my imagination was and where I could do this. I hope I have another chance to do something as kooky, because I thought that was truly one of the most enjoyable experiences. I was a new father at the time. My son was just born a month before, and my wife and I, we all moved there. It was like we would have stayed there if our parents would have killed us for leaving.
Yeah.
But that was a
so
great
cool,
experience. Man. And it came very close to being theatrical. It was just that they didn't feel they had French Stewart was incredible, but they wanted, certain configurations of known entities. And I just grateful that it was still one of the highest grossing direct to DVD movies ever. and it was made over $65 million. So it
Insane.
really did well
And
for
I
them.
think they were successful at that time because they did that. I interviewed Stuart Penkin, and when he went
Mhm.
in to make Honey, We Shrunk Ourselves, that movie
Yes.
was supposed to be theatrical, and then I forgot what movie came out or something bombed. He told me the whole story, but it was like, oh, and that was like one of their first ever like bigger budgets that went to VHS at that time. But it's so crazy when you think about like when you're so good at something, it kind of almost not obviously you're getting work, so that's a good thing. But it seemed like you were the guy to go to because that's a hard job. Like doing this podcast, we want to do something unique. So sequels, and when my dad was a garbage man, people would usually throw out VHS tapes of the sequels,
Ugh.
probably a lot. But it seemed like sequels were the ones that I would get so many. I remember having like 5 copies of Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, and like I used to collect them. But like it is crazy. It's like your first movie you did, amazing. You guys did X amount over. Let's make another one. It's like, what would be the smartest thing to do? Well, I don't know. Put more into it, develop things more. You know what I mean? But they're like, no, we're going to cut the budget because we want the people that love that first one to try out that second one. And for some
Yes.
companies, they don't care about anything. It's just like a movie. Sometimes it's an in-name only sequel when people in it have nothing connection to it. So that's a difficult thing. But it looks like I haven't seen like Beverly Hills Chihuahua 2, Tooth Fairy 2, but like the similar things are with those as well, I'm sure, right? The drop
Well,
offs in budget.
and it's well, sometimes sequels are treated like the bastard stepchild of the first
Yeah.
film, and I understand. Like the first film had to face a blank page and devise a world and a look and a tone and a pacing. So I understand the appeal of that, but I always look at it as going, when you think about the Bond movies or John Wick or other things where they're given the budgets, like you say, to nurture and develop it, you're often putting numbers in those. You're often putting a name after it. They try to bury the sequel idea and say, look, it's just another chapter in this world building exercise of this movie. I have done a lot of sequels, and I don't know if it hurt. Maybe it hurt, maybe it didn't. I always looked at it as an enormous opportunity and challenge.
Oh yeah.
And say, how can I take a movie that was, I would say traditionally the budgets I've had are 1/8 to 1/10 of the other budgets. So like
Yeah.
Tooth Fairy 2, I think we made for $5 million, and the first one was close to 50. And Beverly Hills Chihuahua, we made for 12 million. And that one I want to say was 65 or 75, maybe more. I know it was supposed
Yeah.
to be a lower budget and got bigger. So the challenges are, how do you have a movie that can sit proudly next to the first one and still attract the audience to go back and watch the first one, the second one, or if there's a third one, and be true to it. So I always feel one thing I've really gotten good at is, what is the DNA of a piece? What is the essence of, if it's Tooth Fairy, it's a comical curse story and it's a fish out of water story. It's a guy least likely to have to take on the role of being a tooth fairy. So he should not be a kid lover, or he should have something where he's at odds with the role of, of being a mythical character. In Chihuahua, it was an opportunity to build on the mythology of the first one and have the same cast returning. So to have George Lopez back and to build upon what does it mean to be a family, that was wonderful. And I really got to do some amazing things with that movie. And it was, the interesting challenge was, and I'm really proud of it, that we had a fraction of the money to do 700-800 visual effects shots that all had to have talking animals that had to look as good as the first one. So that was a really great challenge. And it was like playing literally like 4-dimensional chess while skiing a black diamond slope for 12 hours a day. I mean, because you're having on set sometimes 11 dogs, and you have trainers for each dog, sometimes 2 trainers. So you're going, okay, how can I do this? Where can I do split screens? Where can I hand off digitally? Where can I shoot the master and then add in the dog later? I mean, there was so much crazy thinking. It isn't just shooting a scene. I block all the scenes with stuffed animals, and then you're figuring out how many expensive shots, close-ups can you do? How many wide shots with a lot of animals, or how many shots over animal shoulders to save money? It was a mathematical exercise in budget scheduling and logistics. It was
How do
fun.
you prepare for that? Did you reach out to anybody that's worked with like many animals before, or Because that's got to be like, that's a big task to
I
direct
I
animals
think
like
that
that.
it is, and what I look at it is that I don't direct the animals, I direct the show. You're so fortunate. I've had such amazing animal trainers. There's a company, Birds and
Oh, yeah.
Animals, that I met on Pooch and the Pauper, and then started using them on other shows. And it was wonderful. I mean, these people, I'm still friends with some of them because they're just truly gifted storytellers, and they understand how to elicit curiosity in an animal as opposed to blind obedience. And the
Yeah.
trainer is as important as you're casting the trainer as much as you're casting an actor. And the ones who do it can do incredible things. Like there's Mathilde Cagny, who did Chihuahua with me. She and some other people on the show trained a dog to play piano, and that took a month, of just training the dog to cross its hands and
Yeah.
to play Fear Release. But we did incredible things, and there, once you understand what you need in the shot and you worked it out together, then there's compound moves. You say, okay, I need the dog to go from, you say, I want the dog to go over here, roll over, then jump up on this filing cabinet, and then sneak through this. Okay, well, is that one or is that two things? Are we
Yeah.
hiding the trainer? Are they motivated by food, by sound, by clickers? Do you want to step on other actors' lines? You have to train the human actors to ignore the verbal cues. You're going to ADR over them. It's very complicated work, and you have to understand what drives an animal. I've had on one of the Doolittle sequels, I think I had like at least a dozen species of animals. And you're going, okay, the turtle's driven by this, but the tarantula wants that. The snake, this animal's afraid of this one. So you're trying to figure out all this stuff. And it's a lot of fun. It's actually a lot of fun. And then you end up codifying, like on Chihuahua, I codify all the emotions. So if I say, oh, I want an animal who's embarrassed, maybe I want him to learn to do this. If I want him to be curious, maybe he cocks his head or he does something, unusual. So you end up marking up the script with all the emotions that you want, and then you figure out the behavior, kind of like you might do with a human actor too. You might say, oh, okay,
Yeah.
this guy's, snaps the pencil when he's really upset. Okay, well, we got to plant that. So it's all that stuff that you have great people who teach you, and you listen and watch them, and then you kind of know, but they direct the animals. I just direct the story.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's cool that you had obviously you had a connection working with Larry the Cable Guy. Because at that time, man, he was already huge already. I remember the mid 2000s watching Comedy Central, and I'm like, oh, I know Jeff Foxworthy, but when they did the
Yes.
the redneck comedy, blue collar comedy
Yes.
tour,
Yes.
that was the coolest thing, and those guys were hilarious together. And then it's cool that he was able to do this into him transition to acting because he's funny. He's a funny guy no matter what, in interviews or on stand-up. He could do it all.
Dan Whitney, aka Larry the Cable Guy, is such a genuine, big-hearted, talented guy. I can't wait to work with Larry again. I think he would be great in the drama. He knows how to make it real, and that's something that I always loved about the great comedians. No matter what, they would drop the I'm performing mask and just be human. And Dan is that way. And when you think of what he did with Mater and brought that character to life,
Oh,
but
my
it was
God,
really
yeah.
a lot of fun working with Dan. He's fearless and was great about doing anything, except he hates heights. And when I had to hoist him up on the green screen, oh my God. I mean, I thought there would be skid marks in that pink tutu, because that's not, I mean, that's first of all, your voice goes up an octave because that harness is tight around you and you're being
Yeah.
hoisted up, but it's, you're high up there. But we had a great time, and Dan knows how to take the script and keep it real and stretch it to give himself room for lines and vary them. And, the trick with Dan is just I want to give him a space to be Dan, and just to
Yeah.
say, okay, great. And teach the other actors that they can, help them to realize that we can go off book, and that Dan's going to make it funny, and all you got to do is stay in character. If you can stay in character, or whatever comes out of him, which is going to be brilliant, then you're going to go for the ride.
Yeah. That's cool. Whenever I see people work with And essentially, like, making a film, it's such an intimate thing because you're like together. Like, it's like, hey, we're together. We're seeing you all the time for 2-3 months, as long as the shoot is. Then it's like you're gone, and then you see him again, and then when you have that conversation, you can like form that kinship again. So it's cool you're able to work with him a few years later on Jingle All the Way too. Again, another sequel, like Little Rascal Saves the Day, Jingle All the Way too. So it's like, again, you had the, like, and you work on other projects as well, but it is cool to have that because, again, and not to go too deep into the sequel, it is like such a fascinating thing because the audience wants you to, they want something from the first one. And then your
Yes.
job's like, maybe like to get rid, let's get that out of the way early. And then you can have your own story, because I think it's amazing when a sequel can be just as good or better than the original in all genres. Like, I can watch any of the Police Academy movies except the one when they go to Russia, and they're like
Yes.
all just so funny. And that's like so hard, because usually when it gets towards the end of a franchise, like Revenge of the Nerds 3, I don't think I've ever seen, but like, it's so weird how sometimes they can just die off, but some can just sometimes even get any better. And they get so far away. Like Fast and the Furious is about drag racing for a couple $100 and stealing car stereos. Then like 8 movies later, they're in space,
Well, yeah, no, exactly. But things, if you allow them to evolve, I mean, and without jumping the shark, I mean, that became kind of I would say it's a blue collar James Bond. And that's what it
Yeah.
evolved to. And that was a brilliant concept, to take a police procedural, and car racing movie. But, I got to say, it's interesting, but I always looked at Gadget not as a sequel, but as its own episode, kind of like a new James Bond. And Little Rascals was weird. I wouldn't call Little Rascals a sequel, because the movie that Penelope Spheris did in the 90s was really a movie based upon 200 shorts from the 30s and 40s. So I thought Little Rascals was its own deal. And I know some people were like, you ruined my childhood. Or some people,
my gosh.
they were like, that was and I go, great. We all experience whatever we experienced. But if you were in the 30s and 40s, you might think the 90s movies was a transgression of your childhood. I don't look at it that way at all. I just go, if your childhood is ruined by a movie, then maybe you didn't have a great childhood.
Oh man, but the movie that
Little Rascals was awesome.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
No, it's again. No. I was going to mention. I was going to talk about like. So my buddy Jamie reached out to you, and then I looked at your IMDb, and then I was like, yeah, my daughter loves Woody Woodpecker. We've seen that movie so many times. She's 6.
Oh,
so
that's the
I
best
didn't
age.
even know about it. Not that I didn't know about it. I think I remember the trailer for when it came out around that time, but not like I would be like, hey, I don't want to see a family movie, because I watch like all types of movies. But we discovered it on Netflix, I think like a year or 2 ago. And man, what's really cool about the cast is unbelievable. I should have the IMDb pulled up, but the guy who plays the dad with the beard,
Tim Omenson, who was in Psych and Supernatural, and he was in, what was he? Oh my God, I'm having a brain fart.
I loved him in Gallivant. Do you remember Gallivant on ABC?
That's the musical. He's a brilliant actor and comedian. And ironically, our kids went to school together. That's how I met him.
Oh wow! Oh, that's how you met him for the movie. So when you were casting for that movie,
yeah.
Oh,
But like it was, but that movie was interesting. I chased the rights for that for 10 years. So I felt that there was the technology had finally come about, so you could do an affordable CGI lead. And I loved the character, and I really loved tricksters. I've always loved trickster characters who, like The Mask or Woody Woodpecker or, even Deadpool. Those are all characters who stir the pot and get away with things that we all wish we could say and do. And so I went to Universal, and they go, we don't know. And we don't know. The character's not very popular. He's not on the air anymore. And I went to probably about 7, 8, 9 producers who had deals at Universal, and all of them entertained it, but none of them wanted to go for it. And then I kept chasing it. And then I made Little Rascals, and it was successful for them. I had done The Haunting Hour for this group at Universal, and that had done well. And then a couple of years later, I made Little Rascals, and they said, "What do you want to do next?" And when they say, "What do you want to do next?" Everyone was happy. And so I said, "I really want to do Woody Woodpecker." And they go, "That's so funny because we were just talking about that." I go, "Well, I have a great take on it." And so Billy and I came in with a treatment, and I came in with a lookbook, and they said, "Okay." And they trusted us. And we wanted to stay true to the character and not soften him, not do like, "Oh, we're going to make him cute and cuddly." He is going to be the irascible loner who doesn't know that he's lonely. And he is going to be kind of a slightly insane version of kind of a character. And it's interesting because Woody Woodpecker has had 3+ incarnations over the years. When he started off, he was kind of wall-eyed and kind of a hick. And he was a lunatic, but he was, played very differently. And then he has started to evolve. The model changed, and then it kept changing. And he went through 3 or 4 incarnations. And we went with the most current incarnation, but went back to more of the character of the earlier one, who was unpredictable and a little bit loony. And so they trusted us, and I needed a little more money to do the movie. And it's amazing we pulled off what we did with the resources we had. There's 1,000 visual effects shots, of which about 700 of them are Woody, and the rest are environmental things or fire, or, adding a lot. There's a lot of other effects in the movie that are invisible, but it was an enormous amount of planning because the sequel training was invaluable. If I had not done sequels, I couldn't have done that movie, because the going rate for Alvin the Chipmunks and other movies that had CG leads was in the $50 to $75 million range. And here we made this movie for a lot less, roughly $8 million.
It just looks great. Like, I think that's one of the things when you watch, especially when there's CGI in a movie, that's the one thing that turns you off. Like the eye level when characters are looking at the CGI character and just how they look. Like, to me, that was like, I'm watching Woody Woodpecker. Like, I know that's simple because that's what the movie is, but it looked like what I was used to. There was not like it was almost like Sonic. Like, if you really think about the Sonic movies right now, isn't it amazing? They got panned like crazy for having Sonic have teeth. And then overnight they change everything. And now they're on a 3rd movie and they have a whole universe and everything. But like,
I think they've done a great job. I love those. And I love
they're
watching
so good
with my nephew, and they're really well done. And I got to say, it had enormous heart, and it was world building and great roles for Jim Carrey and for the Sonic characters. I think they did a great job. And we really wanted, for Woody, so much of it was we had seen Alvin the Chipmunks, which was a really gold standard in terms of, and Stuart Little, in terms of the depth of the eyes, and really wanted Woody to have, for the budget we had, wanted to have an enormous amount of depth. We shot that movie in 26 days, which is insane.
Wow.
And we started, and the whole process of building, taking raw land, because the main character, Tim Omenson, is a lawyer who wants to build his dream house, and in the process disrupts Woody's dream, his dream. So we had to go from undisturbed land to tearing it all down, to building a partially built home, to more built, and then burning it down, and then starting over with him starting his new home in 26 days. So it was such a 4-dimensional chess problem of doing that, plus all the CG character work. But it was a lot of fun. Eric Bauza, who does so many, he's an Emmy Award-winning voice. He had not done the lead in a movie, and I loved Eric. We had worked on a test for Marvin the Martian, and which I was attached to direct at Alcon and Warner, and just thought he was the best, and so brought him on to do the voice. But we did a pre-record, but you can't use the pre-record when you're shooting because the other actors may not, if they fall out of sync with that, then everyone's off. So we brought in someone to read the character off camera, and they just didn't have any of the energy. So I realized that I am probably, from all the improv skills, probably closer to Woody in personality than anybody else on set. So I just did the voice on set. And while I was looking at my monitor, I was doing Woody, and I became the temp voice that we then had Eric redo. and
Oh,
then
what?
used his and then fleshed it out even more because it was a lot of improv. So it was a
That
lot of
is
fun.
awesome. That's
And I'm
really
so
cool.
happy. And then I went off to do another movie. It wasn't available for the sequel. So I saw the sequel. They did a nice job with that. I'm happy they, built out that world. And unfortunately, that division of Universal is no more. So if there's
Ah,
a third, if there's a third Woody, I would love to do it because I think that character is so rich and there's more stories to tell with
yeah,
him.
no, it was awesome. No, a really good movie, and it's cool. I got to watch the cartoon. That's cool that right at that time, it was the next year they did an old school cartoon. Who had that out?
Well, I did the first year of these cartoons for YouTube. YouTube made a deal with Universal to do
Oh,
10 animated
cool.
cartoons. So I said, I'll come on. And I brought on the model and we made it a 2D. We could afford to do it as a 2D animated series. So I produced that. And then I was Splash Entertainment. And then I directed them all and wrote a chunk of them with Billy. And we brought on some other great writers. And Jeff Klein produced it with me, who had done huge amount of animation. And I just had a great time. And then I left that, and then they went on to do some more. But I have if I'm not available or I'm not interested in continuing it, it's nice to know that things continue without me.
Yeah, right. At that time, after that movie, was there any other characters? Because I feel like sometimes when there's like success in something that hasn't been around in a while, it's like what was the board game movie that set it off recently? I can't think of it, but a movie did really well, and they're like, "Oh my god, we got to do more of them." It wasn't obviously Clue because that was 40 years ago, but there was one recent that came out, and then they're like, "Oh
I think
man, we
you're
got to
right.
make this one." What the heck was the name
Well,
of the
but
movie?
it's interesting when when that happens, everybody's trying to catch the fumes of somebody else's unexpected
Always,
success. And
always,
then
yeah,
there's also then that sometimes people want to expand stuff. Like with Woody, we were able to take all the other Walter Lantz characters and build out Woody's world in the forest by having all the characters that Walter Lantz had created, Andy Panda and Chili Willy and the Panda and the Vulture and all these other ones. And it was a lot of fun. And I know in the sequel, they added two more, the Walrus and the Vulture, they added to that
yeah.
world. So look, everyone, there's always opportunities to do world building.
Yeah, I think it was like there's definitely a board game movie I'm thinking of, but like Barbie. Barbie went great, and then it's like, oh man, let's make a Polly Pocket movie. And it's like, who would have thought of that unless one happened? I wonder if there was any other, because reading your bio, Hong Kong Phooey was one that you were interested in doing. Like to
Oh
me,
no, I
that
was
is awesome.
well. I love the test for Hong Kong Phooey is one of the things I'm so proud of,
Oh,
and
that's what
that
I
was
mean. Yeah,
got
you
me.
got to that point that you wrote a script for it. I'm sure,
Yeah,
right?
well, I wrote it, and then we had other writers, David Goodman, Torgov and Kaplan. We had all the different writers come on, but Billy and I wrote an early draft, and Kirk D'Amico wrote a draft, and there was a couple people who wrote. We kept on trying to get it right. We had Brett Ratner was producing. We had Eddie Murphy was
Wow.
attached. He was going to bring on some very great people to support the other roles. We had a budget. We were scouting locations, but it's just like you have to pull the trigger when you have to pull the trigger. And for whatever reason, Alcon did not pull the trigger on that one at the moment when I think in that moment passed. It's not an
Yeah.
easy movie to make. It's about a $70 million movie or 50 rather. And it was an expensive movie, but I'm so grateful we got to do the test. Yeah. We had Jackie
No, that's
Chan.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
But you know what? But
that's
I
cool.
do think the reason, I'll tell you something that's interesting, that it's very hard to revive legacy characters. That's why it took me 10 years to get Woody Woodpecker. That he was not on in the United States, but he was huge in Brazil, and he never went off the air in Brazil. So when he was as big as SpongeBob, and so Universal Brazil helped contribute to the funding of that movie, enabling us to have
Ah.
the budget. Now, Hong Kong Phooey is only on reruns. You would have to do a new Hong Kong Phooey, which I think they did or were talking about. But the irony of that movie is that when I started it, my son was too young to watch it, and now he's too old to watch it. So,
Oh
or
man. And you know what's
maybe he
funny?
would like it.
I was reading your bio, and in my head I'm like, he probably didn't update it this recently. I'm like, I'm having like a fever dream of like I've seen Hong Kong Phooey in a movie, and I'm trying to think of it, And then I Google it. I'm still here. I think my wife's trying to call me. But
You
I was
saw
like,
the
I had a
you
fever
probably
dream.
saw it. You probably saw
Scoob.
the test short that was floating around, and
Oh,
you
maybe
probably saw
that.
the test short for Marvin the Martian, which was floating around. Marvin would. Oh my God, I'm so sad that Marvin didn't happen. But like you always have these darlings that you mourn. It's just part of the business and part of your evolution as a career. But I was so enamored and got such an education thanks to Alcon, who funded these shorts, that I was
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm ready for Woody Woodpecker, because I was in that world of making imaginary things real, and feel palpable emotionally. But Marvin got very close also, and that was great because we set it at Earth Day. So that was the idea that they would release it on Earth Day. But that's a really cool one. Look, hopefully some of these movies come back around, but if not, I had fun working on them while I did.
Yeah, no, totally. Alex, it's been so much fun. What I always love to ask folks, especially sometimes you never know. There's always that I don't want to say if it's a meme that I just saw, but it was like probably like something you read in somebody's bathroom or in their
Mhm.
kitchen, and be like, you never know, like when it would be, like when a moment is a moment, I guess. So like when you're early on in your career, did you keep mementos? So say like your first directing or like any big movement props or anything. Was there anything that you collected over the years
You mean from my experiences
from
making
your
things?
films, from ones you worked on, like on Monsters? Do you have that script or do you have anything from that?
I might. I don't know. I have to look around. I probably have the scripts. I've saved various things. I think I love that I have the Winky ring from My Date with the President's Daughter, the eye.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
have that. I have a couple things from Inspector Gadget that I love, a couple props. I've tended to save things, but I always know at the end of the day, the prop isn't the thing, the DVD isn't the thing, the poster isn't the thing. It was the making of it that was the main thing for me. So
Yeah.
I've given certain things away, or shed things. The wand, the actress who was in Tooth Fairy, she has the wand, I think, and I don't know, but it's I do love them. I think they're talismans. I think all the objects we surround ourselves with are talismans for the things we experience. So I love them as remembrances of that. But for me, it's the most important thing was the act of making them and getting to make them with great people. And then the DVD always feels like or the poster, it's a thing. But
Yeah.
I do love some of the props. They're kind of fun.
No, that's awesome. And then now, since obviously I know you're a funny guy, you love like the old school cartoons. Besides obviously Marvin the Martian, like Hong Kong Phooey, was there any other ones that you were thinking about or wrote anything about to make a
I mean,
film?
there's a couple, but I'm going to keep them under my hat but just only because, God forbid I put out in the world and someone's going to be like, oh, look, if they had the rights and called me, that's great. But if they didn't, I'd be like, I don't know. There's a
Blink
couple, but
twice if it's Magilla Gorilla.
oh, someone actually approached me about McGilly years ago. That's a great character.
Yeah.
But, I have to say that, I'm really excited now because I've spent the last year developing my own CG character. So, like Woody,
Cool.
who is, or Marvin or Fooey, a fully CG rendered character integrated into the real world as a hybrid.
Cool.
So I just did a test short with this character named Izzy, and I have interest in him, and so I'm excited to take all my experience servicing other wonderful characters and now create one of my own. So that's what I'm most excited about right now.
That is really cool. Maybe I'll put this in your like Wacky Racers. Could you imagine that
Love,
movie? God.
I love Wacky Racers. I think Speed Racer became what I would imagine a really cool Wacky Racers
Yeah.
movie would be. But I
Yeah.
love Wacky Racers. That I think should come back because I think there's a great toy line there. But also that race was fantastic. It was like
Yeah.
Mad World, I mean,
Yep.
I was I remember talking to my writing partner about that. I said, I think there's something there, but it's like the quagmire that is Warner Brothers or Hanna-Barbera was a great place, but they, all these smaller companies got eaten up, so classic. I was interested in Hut stuff for years, by the way. And I
Yeah.
developed that with Harvey Media. and I wanted to do a CG devil and angel on a shoulder movie. So I wrote a script for it. It's really funny. And I went back to DreamWorks because they bought classic media, but, doing a devil movie, and it was caught up in a lot of rights issues there. So I don't know. Maybe I'll get to do hot stuff one day. Who knows?
Yeah. They're like Laugh Olympics. I think those things are so, like, I get my daughter into those cartoons. Not like I tell her, hey, you can't watch things nowadays. I think there's some great, like, storytelling in those old Scooby-Doo. They're just, they're so well
they're
done.
great.
And I feel like they treat kids. They're not like, you're a kid, just like your parents treated you, taking you to movies or letting you watch things that maybe should have been not for your age, but it gives you, it helps develop you. Like when you're watching Scooby-Doo, you're like a little kid, and it's like, I'm trying to solve this kind of serious crime that happened.
Yes.
That these people are trying to take their land.
But I think you said something really important, which was they didn't talk down to kids, and you never felt that they were condescending. And I always thought that was so important, never to talk down to kids and to treat them like the important beings they are. And that's what you want to be as a parent too. So when I got to make Under Wraps 1 and 2 for Disney, I was really thrilled because I wanted to do, if I was like 7 through 11, that's the movie I would have wanted to watch, because I thought I would have wanted to have an adventure that my parents didn't know about. And that would have been thrilling for me. And that's, I think, is like Little Rascals too. It's the secret life of kids, and that they have these adventures and they're capable, and their parents have no idea that they've done, that they saved the universe or that they stopped the crime. Those are the wish fulfillment, to have a life bigger than your normal life.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Alex, I'm happy we connected. Stay safe out there. Hopefully things don't get to you in your area where you're at. But I appreciate
thank you so much for having me on your show. I think it's great. You've been such a great interviewer, and I so appreciate you.
Thank you.
I love all of his stories, but the one I wanted him to tell you guys was the one of him dressing like a monkey for the bananas in order to win free tickets for the year. And then his dad went down there, the guy made right on it, and the rest is history. It was such a there's these pivotal moments with folks in their journeys to get into this career, and just something like that. It was always in him that he was going to do it. Like I said to him, maybe if he didn't do that, didn't go to the movies all the time, maybe it wouldn't have worked out. But no way. He was, no matter what, going to be destined for this. And God, I'll put his IMDb in the episode notes. Just all the movies he works on are so much fun. Great kids movies. So if you're listening and you got kids, check it out. I love the stories. So cool. The first thing he got to work on was with the Stillers. Awesome stuff. And so your homework, Inspector Gadget 2. It's fun. Honestly, I remember the original one because it was such a big deal, because I absolutely loved the cartoon. Still do. Got my kids hooked on it because why not? And you can check it out. It's free on Disney Plus, which who doesn't nowadays? You can watch it. French Stewart, Lane Hendricks. Lots of fun. So So don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.